A Lion locomotive in 5-inch gauge, part 6, fitting a new water gauge. When I first bought this locomotive, there was a water gauge fitted and there was nothing wrong with it. I just didn't like the look of it or the design. So I removed it and put some blanking plugs in the holes. The original water gauge now resides in my box of old water gauges. Now the time has come to remove the blanking plugs and fit a better looking water gauge. I found one on eBay and it was quite unusual, so I bid on it and actually won it. It's a 3-cock type water gauge with a connecting lever. The only problem with this is the gauge is designed to fit a specific boiler, and the distance between the two threaded parts is critical. This water gauge doesn't have individual shut-off cocks. It has a pair that are linked by a lever, so with the shut-off cocks in the open position, it's important that the two levers that operate the shut-off valves are a specific distance away from each other. This clip shows the gauge glass, and as you can see, it's very short. This is an indication that I'm going to need a longer gauge glass, and this will affect the position of the operating lever. The very first thing I'm going to do is remove this horrible silicone rubber sealant from around the boiler bush. I need to do the same on the top bush as well. Whenever you fit a new water gauge to a boiler, the first thing that you need to do is to loosely assemble the parts to make sure that the gauge glass that comes in from the top and goes all the way down to the bottom lines up perfectly. If it doesn't, you have a problem. For this first test fit, I'm not using any Loctite 542. And for any viewers out there who haven't seen any of my other videos, Loctite 542 is a sealant that I frequently use. It's a thread sealant, also known as hydraulic seal. You must never get this confused with Loctite 603, which is a high-power retainer. Loctite 542, as I've just mentioned, is just a sealant. It will firm up the fit of a thread into a boiler bush and stop it leaking, but you can still remove it very easily. The design of this water gauge is quite different to the ones that I normally use in a few different ways. Apart from it being of the 3-cock type, physically it's much more delicate than the ones I normally use. The gland nuts that hold the glass in place are actually knurled rather than being large nuts, and the very fine scale blowdown valve is on the side of the bottom fitting. Another good thing about this water gauge is that it has inspection plugs that can be removed to allow cleaning the waterways should they get blocked with limescale. This is Loctite 542, easily identified because it's red. I'm applying some of this to the thread on the top part of the fitting just to tighten the nut up a little bit. I'll still be able to turn it, but it will be slightly stiffer. By carefully adjusting the position of the lock nuts on the top and bottom fitting, it was a very simple job to make them align with each other. This is a good system. It's actually better than using shim washers. It's quicker anyway. No sooner had I fitted the old water gauge, I removed it because it's too short anyway. Now it's time to fit the operating arms on the shut-off valves. Before I did this though, I adjusted the position of the shut-off valves before fitting the gauge, and by the position of the squared ends of the valves, they're not in the same place as each other, which is going to be a bit of a problem really. This next part of the job was very fiddly. These nuts are very small indeed, but luckily I had a spanner like this that fitted them perfectly. These are very cheap laser-cut spanner sets from Blackgates Engineering, and in the past I've mentioned them and had scathing comments from viewers. Mainly comments like, as an engineer I would never have things like this in my toolbox. But because I'm not an engineer, I'm quite happy to have these in my toolbox. And this was the only spanner in my collection that fitted the nuts and made the job very, very easy. With the glass fitted in position in the lower part of the gauge, I'm measuring it to find out how long the piece of glass needs to be. And from what I can see here, the glass tube needs to be ½ an inch longer than the current one. And the best place to look is in my small box of gauge glasses. I don't have any of the thermometer type glass in the right diameter. This is quite good stuff to use. It makes the water level more visible. This happens because of the refraction of the light. But as I've just said, I haven't got any of this, so I'm going to use a piece of plain glass tubing of the right diameter. I slid the piece of glass tubing into place and tightened the knurled nuts at the top and bottom. At a later date, time permitting, I will modify the push rod to lengthen it. But before I do that, I need to steam the engine to make sure that these valves are watertight or steam tight. I really do like this small locomotive. It's very simple, slip eccentric valve gear, very free running, but it does have its share of problems. Most of them are going to be easy to fix. One or two will be more complicated, and I'll show them later on in the series. When I bought this locomotive, I actually had a good look at it while it sat on the railway track at the club where I went to pick it up. I did this before I paid the seller for it, and it's just in the right condition. It's quite well made, it looks good, it has problems that need sorting out. But then, of course, that's what I do, so I'm quite happy about it. It will make a good series. The series is only on part 6, and there's quite a few more to go yet. But that's it for this one. Stay safe, stay well. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.